What if you felt like your avatar in the virtual world was more your identity than how you were in the physical world? And what if in the virtual world you had a safe space to express yourself and that actually saved your life? Today, I'm speaking to you about representation in the metaverse, specifically that of transgender people. And you can also consider this talk sort of my coming out as a transgender person who's also an entrepreneur, a futurist, and someone who's developing the metaverse. I'm going to discuss why transgender representation is so important and how it's been squashed time and time again throughout history. We're living through that right now. And I'm going to offer 10 tips that you can use in your metaverse to be able to create a safer space for transgender people. Hello, my name is Ethan Bach, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ethos Experiential Design Studio, where we deliver engaging, immersive experiences in the metaverse, virtual worlds, hybrid, and in person. And we create unexpected joy that creates community and engaging, interactive storytelling. So why now? I really haven't talked that much about being transgender in the 8 years that I've been an entrepreneur. And I'll talk about why later, but specifically, why am I coming out now? Now, in the past year, there have been over 80 anti-trans bills in the United States. Trans people are being targeted again by the conservatives at a higher rate than any other group in history. Trans people are over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crimes. 52% of all transgender and non-binary youth in the US has seriously contemplated suicide in 2020. That's 52%. And women of color who are transgender are one of the highest homicide rates. People are killing them at a larger rate than any other group. 375 were killed, transgender people were killed in 2021. So, and here we are saying that we're going to build this new world. And I don't hear anyone talking about transgender representation. So, I mean, and also, I actually don't know anyone who's also a transgender entrepreneur. And I had to decide, if nobody's going to do it, then I need to do it. So I'm going to stick my neck out here and I'm going to represent transgender people and speak up for what is needed. So first, let me explain, transgender is an umbrella term. So that can include trans men, trans women, non-binary, gender fluid. It can include a lot of different representations of gender. So when we're talking about transgender, it's a wide spectrum of people. Now, when I transitioned over 20 years ago, there was very little, if any, representation that was positive in the media of transgender people. We had Maury Povich, where trans women would be on there like ripping their hair out and yelling at each other, if you remember Maury Povich. But there wasn't anything. There was this one show that I saw that I was so excited to see because there was some sort of trans representation of trans men. And it was on the special TV show of Wonders of the World or something like that. And they showed the transgender men right after they showed the woman who didn't eat food. She just lived off of air. So that's kind of what it's been represented in the media, is that there's this sort of mystery fantasy. It's not real, but I'm here to tell you for sure we're real. So luckily for me, when I was coming out as transgender, I lived in Olympia, Washington, which is probably one of the most liberal towns on the planet. There were people who were definitely pushing the envelope there. But my community was still on message boards a lot of the time. And this is where I really got to talk through things. I got to find resources. I got to find community. So message boards and being online has always been a safe place for people to go, as long as you have a safe place to be where no one's going to harass you. That message board and places like this. So when we talk about the metaverse, we're going to talk about places like this. How do you create that? It's going to save lives. Around that same time, I also found my voice through digital media. I started doing media production. I was doing experimental media, but I was able to speak about my experience through that medium. And lo and behold, years later, I ended up at one of the top 10 programs in the United States and got my MFA in electronic arts from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. That's where I learned to do interactive design using sensors, programming, and eventually started my business. By the time I transitioned into my role as full-time representing as male, I really needed a break. I took a break from really talking about it. I mean, I had been harassed. I had inappropriate questions constantly and tons of misunderstandings. There was even this time when I was at the mall. It seemed like everything always happened at the mall when I was pre-transition, and someone threatened me, and I stood up for myself, and we almost had an altercation. And that was just how it was, me walking around in that body, in that persona. So luckily for me, I don't have to do that anymore. And I kind of have a choice as to whether or not I let people know, which total privilege, I get it. But it was nice to be able to have that break. And still, it's nice to have that break. I continue to make my digital art. My digital art actually did have some pieces of it that told my story and talked about my transgender experience, but I really worked on broadening what my art was about and how it impacted people on different levels. So it was the summer of 2007, and I'd just seen this show on Oprah, and Oprah finally talked to a transgender person, and Oprah said, "This is okay. This is normal." And I was about to head out on a road trip. I was doing some filming for my final project, my thesis project, and I hit the road with my pickup truck and my motorcycle in the back of my pickup truck. And I drove all the way from New York down the East Coast, across the South, and up the West and across the top. And at one point, I ended up in Las Vegas, visiting a friend from high school. This friend had really gotten into hanging out with bikers, serious bikers who slept in the ditch on road trips when they were tired. So here I am, I'm in Las Vegas, hot as heck, riding motorcycles with these guys. And the next day we get up and nobody else is up, just us three guys. And so we decided to go to the flea market. We climb into the 1970s Ford pickup, long bench seat. You can imagine this. I'm in the middle. And I had promised myself when I saw that story about Oprah that no matter what during this road trip, that if someone, or for the rest of my life, really, I've used this, but if someone was going to ask me something that was relevant to me talking about being transgender, that I would do it. Because if Oprah says it's okay, everyone else has to catch up. So here I am, I'm in this pickup truck going to the flea market. I don't know where we're going. And I'm in the middle between these two guys. They got tattoos all over. They got unwashed hair. I don't know these guys. And the one guy asked me, "So what are you taking your road trip for?" I said, "Well, I'm doing a documentary and I'm filming." "Oh, what's your documentary about?" I said, "About transgender people and about them being people and not just about, 101 needing to exist. Like, actually, what do they do with their lives?" And he said, "Well, that's great. Why did you pick that topic?" And I took a deep breath and I said, "Because I'm transgender." And they both just sort of stopped and looked at me. And the one guy, the scariest guy, he looked at me and he said, "I can't imagine you as a woman." And I just said, "Imagine how that felt for me." And then we didn't talk about it. And later on, we went back to the house and we talked to my friends and all that, but we never talked about it. And the next day, my friend came to me and she said, you know what? He came up to me and told me what you said about that you can't imagine, you couldn't imagine yourself as a woman either. And that's why you're transgender. And that's why you transitioned. And she said, he just looked at her and said, I get it. He got it from that, which was just quite amazing. I love those stories. These are the opportunities and the safety that we want to create for everyone. Did I really feel safe in that position? No, but I had confidence that it was okay because Oprah said it was okay. So then I went on and I worked as a researcher and a professor in digital domes at the Institute of American Indian Arts. Now, this is a 4-year college geared towards Native American students. And I found myself in the middle of a lot of planetarium guys, because a lot of digital domes are still today, like still in the science centers. And I'd end up at these conferences with over 50 white guys. And that was really it. And after a couple of years, I'd find myself on stage sharing our research, talking about the students' work. And I just started calling it out. I'd look across the audience and I'd say, let's see here, like there's so many white guys in this audience. This is a problem. You have to be able to share this storytelling mechanism of the digital dome with everybody. So today I brought some Native American students, I brought some queer people, I brought different people to this talk, to this conference, because we have to have diversity. So in that way, I consider myself like sort of undercover, right? Like I can be in white male spaces readily without anyone even thinking twice about it. And so, but once I'm comfortable in that space and I feel like there's not a threat, then I will start challenging that and disrupting it. So here I am disrupting it now, because really when I came to Denver 8 years ago and I became an entrepreneur, I did not talk about being transgender. That was one of the most white male spaces, almost like the planetariums. And it didn't feel safe for me to be able to talk about it. It felt like if I talked about it, that I would be jeopardizing the success of my company. And there's no way in heck I was going to do that, because my company was and still is so important. But again, why now? My business is flourishing. I feel really confident. And again, no one else is talking about it. So I'm stepping in to be that person. And I've been able to create a company that has reached so many people by creating unique engagements for cities and libraries and brands in the metaverse, creating digital worlds and doing both permanent and temporary installations. So my reach beyond my identity has been much bigger and much wider, and has created joy for people in ways I couldn't have imagined previously. And I'm so glad to be here at this juncture of digital media and see it explode and see the metaverse develop and to be a part of it. So I'm going to share with you 10 things that you can do to help transgender people feel safe in the metaverse. And don't worry about writing this down. You can go to our website at altethos.com and you can find this on our blog. But let me go through this list. Number 1, respect trans people as equal citizens with equal rights. Craft a transgender, inclusive, non-discriminatory policy. This should be in the document everyone signs to get into the world. Train all of your staff to know how to appropriately handle any harassment of transgender person and anyone really. Like hire a diversity trainer that helps your staff to be able to handle everyone properly. Personal boundaries, create a safe area around the avatars. Let that be known. Like Meta just did this in February. I was so impressed. They created something called personal boundary, and it's a 4-foot buffer around your avatar that actually creates safe space. I've seen so much harassment of women, especially in this space. And now you have this boundary where people can't just come up and start inappropriately touching your avatar. The fourth thing, categorize your clothing options, not by male, female, but masculine, feminine, and what about gender neutral? That'll help a lot. These little things are really helpful. Number 5, empower transgender people to have ownership in the metaverse. Now, if you're teaching a workshop or working with different communities to teach them how to do 3D design, how to work in the metaverse, include a queer and or transgender only workshop. Make people feel safe. Number 6, add safe space posters and banners in public spaces, reminding people that you have zero tolerance and that everyone is welcome in the metaverse. Number 7, create transgender avatars. What does that mean? So avatars that look more gender neutral, avatars that have both types of features, feminine and masculine, allow people to be able to mix and match their clothing and not be able to just pick by gender. Same with objects. 8, allow people to display their preferred pronouns. We do this in other public spaces like LinkedIn. I see it all the time. And, some people prefer they as a pronoun. And if that's true, in order to be respectful, they should be able to tell other people non-verbally that that's how they like to be addressed. Number 9, create queer and transgender safe spaces for hanging out. Like in general, like that's why they are gay bars, that's why there's different places for people to hang out, coffee shops that that are queer owned, that kind of thing. Number 10 is create a transgender education center where anyone can be informed if they're curious about what it is to be transgender. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and only 20% of people actually know they know a transgender person. So creating that to be able to offer that, you can partner with a local nonprofit and give your services for them to be able to outline what they'd like to see in that space. Again, if you didn't get the list, go ahead and go to Ethos, ALTETHOS.com, hit our blog. We'll put this list there for you. And I appreciate you listening today. And my name is Ethan Bach, and thank you.